The Hurling Pod.
With Board Gosh Energy, proud sponsors of the Senior Hurling Championship.
Welcome aboard. It is the Hurling Pod with thanks to Board Gosh Energy. They are the proud sponsors of the Senior Hurling Championship. This time round, we've had a bit of a rebrand. We're the three fucking nobodies, according to a Tipperary supporter from last week. This is the joy of when the lads come out with a nice nuanced conversation. I wonder what's going to happen in the Munster Championship. Brought up by James Skehill in the middle of a question that was entirely unrelated. Murph, I'll throw the ball to you and you tell us who isn't coming out of the Munster Championship. And then the lads decide, you know what, might be tricky for Tipperary. We're not ruling them out entirely, but Cork might just finish ahead of them. And even with the caveat where you're like, ooh, I think Waterford are the only team we think that aren't going to come out, and it's going to be a tough battle, and the first two rounds are really important. What gets clipped? No, just the bit where the lads say Tipperary aren't going to get out, and it's a pity they won't be around for the championship this summer. And then some Tipperary supporters took it quite badly. James Skehill, if you want to defend yourself here, one guy on TikTok, this is even on the off the ball TikTok, was like, he was never even a fucking hurler, was said about you.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, don't mind him. I'm worried about Murph. In fairness, I had kind of planned to throw him off because he's trying. Murph, you're very clean. You're very disciplined, right? You're very nicely measured. So I said, oh, I need a curveball or two. So I just know you're 7 days planned now. So I'm expecting something to come at me today. So I'm ready.
No. To be fair, I actually quite enjoyed it. If I was angry, I might have something for you. But I think I was in work or something one of the days and was having a break or something. I had a little look at the phone and I was like, 20 notifications. Like what on Twitter? I was like, I haven't put anything up. This is a bit unusual. Next thing I see, off the ball, have tagged us in. Tipp aren't going to make the out of Munster. I was like, well, okay, we said that in essence, but I believe also we said a grain of sand will tip the scales here. Like so. It wasn't really a fair reflection of it. And next comment I open is like three fucking nobodies. So I was like, all right, there's lads gone here. There's lads absolutely gone now. So I actually really enjoyed it, to be honest. I have to say that's a morbid kind of enjoyment I had. But yeah, great week.
Yeah, I think some of those Tipperary supporters who were having a go have possibly kind of snuck under the rock a little bit after what happened between Clare and Tipp in the semi-finals this weekend.
Paddy, someone needs to check in on Paddy, whoever Paddy is, because Paddy lost the head altogether. Paddy, that was the three fucking nobodies coming.
I think Paddy now needs a small bit of.
Paddy needs to calm it down a small bit, Paddy. Whoever you are,
do you remember that film? What was it called? Bad Boys. Your man goes woo-saw. Start pulling your earlobes, Paddy. Start pulling your earlobes and start saying woo-saw. Okay, calm it down, son.
I have a feeling Paddy is probably spinning already and going, actually 5 weeks off to get ready for Limerick. This is a genius move by Tipperary to not qualify for the league final. But it was a hell of a weekend, and it's left us with lots to talk about, because there was part of us going, you know what, I kind of agree with some of the players who did the interviews last week that the semi-finals feel unnecessary, particularly as we move into the new Division 1 era from next year. It just feels like play a league final between the top two teams and let that be the end of the campaign and leave there be a little bit of extra time to get ready for championship. And then, we weren't expecting this. We were talking last week about there's a very good chance this is going to be Limerick against Clare in the league final, and it's the Cats against Clare again. But it's the first league final between them since 2005, so there's a fresh feel about it. And this is a Kilkenny team, Murph, who have now inflicted the only 2 knockout defeats on Limerick since 2019. So in 5 years, they've lost 2 games. Limerick will turn around the course and say they've won the important ones when it came to All-Ireland finals. But maybe there's a little something about Kilkenny that can get at this Limerick team.
Yeah, maybe there is. Of course, I'd like to think there is. But looking at the game of the weekend, like you definitely have to say the first thing is that Limerick's heads seem to be kind of a little bit somewhere else. Like they started brilliant, 1-2 straight out the traps. I was thinking, right, this could be a tough day now. But then, like the first, I suppose, marker of maybe something being off, or maybe Kilkenny being really at the game, was Kilkenny rattled off. Was it about 2-3 without response? Which is just, that's not Limerick. Where we'd often talk here saying that, if you get a goal, for example, or something, Limerick won't let you get the next. They won't let you get 3 scores. Basically, they'll break it somehow. But they didn't have that control. And 3 goals in 25 minutes as well. Again, I think Will, you had the stat about the last team to score 3 goals against Limerick has been a good few years ago now at this stage. Maybe that's just championship, could be league as well, I'm not sure. But
no, it was league as well, but now they've looked way more leaky in this league campaign. Maybe we can get into that in a minute, but it's very unusual, not just the 3 goals that were conceded in that first half, but the reality is, even if we take TJ's free, which was a bit opportunistic, the reality is that Kilkenny created more one-on-ones where they could have scored more goals here.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know, 1-on-1s was a big thing. That's very uncharacteristic of Limerick. And just being able to, you know, I actually saw Ray Boyne had a really good point just on Twitter. He was just saying that, you know, the fight out the field just wasn't there. And when that isn't there, if you're committing players to run and support in the half back line, midfield, half forward line, but the work rate isn't there, well, then you're actually isolating your full back line, because if that ball gets turned over and you haven't got people in then fighting on that turnover or stopping Kilkenny from getting their head up and identifying that there's, you know, an isolation happening inside in the full forward line, Kilkenny were just popping balls in. Because when Paddy Deegan, let's say they turned over the ball from Keane Lynch, John Donnelly picks it up, pops off to Paddy Deegan. You're saying, you know, pop it over the bar. Paddy Deegan looks up, sees TJ is isolated in on the square 1-on-1 with a defender. I said, Jesus Christ, I can't remember the last time I really saw something like that. And I think the tackle count, which is another big thing, was 50-41 to Kilkenny for the first half, something around that. Again, give Ray Boyne credit for that. Like, there was just a good few markers there that from the first half alone. Now, we still expected Limerick to come out of the traps in the second half, as they do. And even with Owen Cody getting sent off, and I know we'll get into that as well, but even with Owen Cody getting sent off, I thought, right, maybe now Limerick will kick on, and they just didn't. Kilkenny kept them at arm's length. And like, that's even without the Peter Casey sending off, because at that stage, the game was nearly over at that stage anyway. So look, there's lots of things here that were uncharacteristic, but like Derek spoke about it after the game, and you know, he's very measured in what he said. He just said, look, we're happy, yeah, it's great, but we're not going to get ahead of ourselves. A championship game is going to be a far higher pace. We know that, you know, facing Limerick in the championship as opposed to facing Limerick in the league is different. So look, it's a really good win. It's definitely a good marker to say, right, well, we overcame Limerick. But look, nobody's getting ahead of themselves either way on this one.
Yeah, I suppose, Skehill, this goes one of two ways ultimately in how we analyse this later in the year. And there's a lot of questions, people asking, are Limerick going to win every game for the rest of the year, and so on and so forth. But depending on what happens, if this is a 5 in a row at the end of it, people will say that John Kiley took off Lynch, took off Gillan, accepted a defeat in a league semi-final, moved on, got it right for championship. And maybe it was the exact jolt that they needed to kick on, and that bit of extra hunger to make sure they went on for 5 in a row. Or, if the summer doesn't go as planned, do we look back on this and say that maybe there's been a blueprint laid out by Kilkenny for other teams to get at Limerick?
Yeah, I think when you hear successful managers or players at the end of the year after winning a national title, they'll usually pinpoint a momentum shift or a critical moment in the year where they said, right, we got our shit together from there, or we just took off from X performance. And the same thing can happen too if a year goes bad. Like, I've been involved in teams where there's been a couple of incidents and there's a couple of issues, bad games we played, and we've tried to pull it back, and it's like a bit of a snowball effect. It just gets worse and worse. And you know, I was looking into my crystal ball last week, and I couldn't see a situation whereby Limerick were bet. Going off the evidence. I was defending them when they conceded 3 goals against Tipperary, putting them down to, you know, let's say poor decision making, you know, bad structure at the back, something we never associate with Limerick. And then we see that there was 3 goals again. And to be honest, I know we'll touch on it later, but Nicky Quaid, I thought, was excellent for Limerick in the goals yesterday. He had, I think, 8 or 9 goal shots, had to contend with, and saved at least 5 of them. So the damage could have been far worse. But like, it's you know, we perceive things as we watch the game, and just Limerick weren't there at all. They weren't even there in person. You know, whatever has gone on in the last couple of weeks, and we know what's gone on, it's been very well publicised, but even the whole energy that they always bring to games, it was absent. You know, I was with you, Murph. I was looking at the first couple of minutes going, Jesus, this is going to be a rout. Super finish from Gillan on the goal. And next thing, for the next, next 5 minutes, Kilkenny hit 2-3. You know what I mean? Which was, you know, I don't think I've ever seen that before. Like I said, Murph, in any instance, whether it be a bad league game or a championship game, whereby Limerick not alone let you get a goal, but to get 2 goals and tack on 3 points, mainly from turnovers. So the thing about this, we rarely see Limerick get turnover. They usually win the turnover battle, they usually win the possession battle, and they usually win the score at the end. You know, and they lost all 3 emphatically yesterday. And they were devoid of energy, and they were completely isolated at the back. I circled 1-on-1. There are multiple situations where we never associate a Limerick defence allowing a 1-on-1 occur. And like, if you got TJ Reid going 1-on-1, that's danger, major danger. And I just thought Kilkenny hurled really well, heads up hurling yesterday. We talked about the Paddy Deegan pass. Like, it was so accurate. He put it to TJ's outside, up to a lovely spot where TJ can get it on the turn. It was really sharp, and it had the signs of a performance that this wasn't by accident. This was head for the goal, head for the black spot, isolate 1-to-1, crowd the middle. If they want to make it a battle, let's make it a battle. If they try to run through us, we'll have plenty of bodies there to stop it. And Kilkenny showed up for the fight. Limerick got knocked out in more ways than one, you know. And I think that you have to coincide this with a brilliant Limerick or Kilkenny performance, for everyone, even the subs that came in did damage versus Limerick, who just didn't show up after the 5th minute. So John Kelly is food for thought. His interview after the game says as much. So I would like to be in the training session on Tuesday evening.
Well, see, Skehill, I don't want to take away from Kilkenny at all, because I agree with you. I think Kilkenny showed much more intensity, much more hunger. They showed an accuracy when it came to when they got those turnovers as well, because Sean Flynn, our good mate, despite appearing on rival podcasts over the last couple of weeks, sent me on a video on Saturday night, which was basically the point he was making. I'm sure he's going to tweet it. I can't put it in the YouTube or we'll get stung for copyright by using the footage. But the point he was making was that in the All-Ireland final last year, you could see that Kilkenny were trying to get those isolations that actually worked in Páirc Uí Chaoimh the weekend just gone by. But whether down to either good Limerick one-on-one defending or whether down to maybe the execution of the pass not quite being been put in the breadbasket for TJ, it wasn't quite at that level in the All-Ireland final, but it worked this time round, would make it clear that this is a plan that Derek Lyng had for some time. Yeah. I just wonder when it comes to Limerick, because as you say, all the big games, they've shown up over the last 5 years. That's just what they do.
Yeah.
Was this the worst performance we've seen under John Kiley?
I think worst performance when you consider the clientele that were available to him. A lot of the big name players were there and playing, and you can't tell me that there's a grander plan at stake here, whereby they say, let's coax through it, and if we win, we win. If we don't, we don't. It's all about the championship. Murph, you're the same way. We've been involved in plenty of games, whether it be a club challenge game or an inter-county national semi-final. You want to win everything. It's as simple as that. And it just they were outfought yesterday, and which the more surprising one, they were out-structured. If you think of all the national games that Limerick have played in finals, and they have a superb record, they always have a suffocation about them at the back, where teams find it so hard to get even a point out the field. They had low 1-to-1s, and it's because they're from there, let's say 5 to 12. They're so good in zonal defense, so good in attacking, so good at moving the ball, so good at turning you over on a collective press, if you know what I mean, that it's very hard for teams to get through. And if teams then get forced to hit the ball further back towards their own half corner or full back line, it lands into multiple Limerick lads. But yesterday, Kilkenny went straight through them. On multiple occasions, they went straight through them. And I liked what they did. They won the turnovers in the middle, split it out wide, and then in she goes in 1-to-1. And as they went in 1-to-1, if you take the Owen Cody goal, the very first one, there was 3 forwards inside the whole Limerick half on Kilkenny's behalf. And 2 of those forwards were sprinting from the 65. So it was evident, it was clear as day what was happening, that they kept a couple of forwards on the Limerick side of the goal. So if they win the turnover, they had multiple options. A, pop it to go for a point, or B, go out wide. That forced Limerick to push up. And that's something we've never seen before, in a sense whereby they've lost the push. They've lost, let's say, the turnover battle there. I'm looking at a statistic here from the Statsman on Twitter, and the turnovers won. Kilkenny won it by 5. You know what I mean? 32-27. And it's a strange one, because Limerick scored yesterday. They scored 1-8 from play versus Kilkenny's 3-7. You know what I mean? I don't remember 1-8 ever being scored from play at that level for Limerick. It's always been 3-10, 3-15. You know what I mean? So to answer your question in a long-winded way, I do believe it's the worst performance. When they got beaten by Clare last year, it was a titanic game of the Munster Championship. When they got beaten by yourselves, Murph, they came back and it was pipped by a point. I could be wrong, but it was pipped by a point. They had a couple of league losses 2 or 3 years ago, early days, with a lot of their main stars not there. So yes, I'm going to have to say that in a big game, heading for a national title, this is their worst performance in, I'd say, 7 years. Yeah.
Now, look, I'm willing to write off, by the way, games that are played in the league in the regular section where they're going to be mixing up the team. This time round, as experimental as the team that was named on Thursday night was, it still retained, a fair spattering of guys who've won multiple Munsters and All-Irelands, and a lot of their big players were out on the pitch at the weekend. I guess maybe in midfield, you start to realise that when you don't have your 2 enforcers there, that maybe it's not quite the same, Murph, as what it would usually be.
Yeah, potentially, but we've spoken for several weeks about the embarrassment of riches is the term we're using for how many players and what players. Last week we even spoke about what player are going to lose out, because they just have so many players in so many areas. Absolutely, Dara Donovan was a loss in that area, but I think there's way more to point towards, let's say, the 5 to 12 as a group, as opposed to just the 2 midfielders there, and that would have solved everything. If you look at even before TJ's goal, Cian Lynch gets turned over and he kind of just runs into a cul-de-sac, which I can't remember the last time Limerick players do that. There's always players off the shoulder. Like, you usually see Limerick player getting the ball in hand, carrying it past with great pace and power, and then there's someone off the shoulder that goes again and gives the next surge. But I actually looked at Cian Lynch and there was no one really available to him, and that was really just... that to me just smacked of kind of the work rate around the player in possession just wasn't there. Like, as Skehill is saying there, 1-8 from play. Again, that's its own indicator as well that, okay, the work rate isn't there. So there was lots of things that I think, if you put Darragh Donovan back in it, of course, it's going to improve it. But I think what John Kiley even remarked about, and I think what will be the focus going forward, is he'll be saying that's this work rate across the board. Because you couldn't point to any one player to say, well, that was the chink in the armor, or that was the area that they need to improve in. It was a kind of a group dropping of standards, really, is what it was there. But it will certainly serve to focus the mind for John Kiley. It's better get that now than it would be get it in the first round up in Ennis, because then you're going week on week into games, and you've now suddenly. If you needed a reminder, or you needed a bit of kick in the arse, you'd rather get it now than get it later, when you could then suddenly be treading water trying to make sure you qualify. I'm not saying that's going to be the case for Limerick, but I've been part of years with Kilkenny where, you were going week to week, 2013 in particular, you were going week to week with an injury here, an injury there. There's a little bit of, the feel in the dressing room is a little bit edgy, just because you're kind of trying to just get the next result and try and get back to train and improve again, but the confidence wasn't coming, So I think that Limerick have a great opportunity now to go away for a few weeks. Like, they have a bullseye now on Cusack Park and attacking that. But like, we'll talk about Clare in a while. The one thing that I took from the Clare game was just that they look like they're practicing their aggression at the moment. They were so electric starting the game that to me was something I read going like, yeah, okay, Clare are out here playing Tipperary today, but I think Clare are practicing their aggression. They threw everything at that game today. They unloaded the bench. They gave everything for it. So I was looking at that going, right, well, if I was Limerick, I'd be happy I got that reminder the weekend, because it looks like Clare are really, I suppose, really ready for what's coming down the tracks.
Can I ask you a question, Les? Do you think we've seen a bit of this from Limerick before, whereby they've been so good and so efficient and so head and shoulders above the rest that their next game, after a long break, is poor? Do you remember last year they blitzed Kilkenny in the league final? Then the Waterford Championship game, they almost got beaten, and they nearly got, then they got beaten. Do you remember after Clare? So they kind of stuttered through the Munster, and then they took flight. So what's your thoughts on? Yes, they were beaten comprehensively yesterday. They could turn around now in X amount of weeks' time, and I'm not going to say blitz Clare, but they could show up like ravenous animals. You know what I mean? Because they've now got their warning earlier in the season. So I believe that Limerick are good enough, in both on the management side of things and player side of things, that they've recognised this was well below par. And I think the next 3 or 4 weeks are going to be, as they say in the old terms, they'll be skin and hair flying in training. So I think from a Clare perspective, it was well off if Limerick came through, won the national title again in the league. Everyone's applauded them. But now where they're coming from, they're like a wounded dog.
I agree largely what you've just said, which is that of the 4 teams, for me, the team who had the least need to win the league were Limerick, because of what they've done over the last few years. Like, it would have been another national title. I'm sure they would have loved to have won it. But from their point of view, they now have a good run at this. They can always have like a mini pre-season before they get ready for these big games in the Munster Championship. And I wonder if their form in Munster might not be better than it was last year as well, where they went reasonably full tilt at the knockout stages of the league last year, and, as you said, comprehensively beat Kilkenny at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. And then they were a little bit kind of below that level when it came to the Munster Championship itself. Maybe this is all about timing from Limerick's point of view. We don't know, because we're not part of the camp. We don't know what kind of loading they're doing around their training at the moment either, Murph. Where
I think they're... Sorry to interrupt you, Will, as well. Just a point of note. I think they're going to Portugal tomorrow.
Yeah, I think they've got a warm weather training camp in mind. Yeah.
So this is actually...
To be grand.
It's actually perfect timing, I think, if you know what I mean, to assess
this. It is.
Did you ever go in Murph?
No, you've asked me that previously. No, as furthest we ever went was Carton House. We never.
That's true. It was Fort Island.
Fort Island.
Yeah. Cody never brought you abroad.
Not at all. No. I think Brian always viewed it that luxury. You get as much done down in Photo Island or in Carton House as you would in Foreign. So, 2 days. Yeah. And we used to go a few times, and they were great. I used to love them. Jesus, going to Carton House or Photo Island was enough for me. I was happy out. I'd happily would have taken Portugal, but no. But like, even going back there, like, I was even thinking, like you're saying, there definitely was, like, I think complacency does have to be mentioned as well. Like, I mean, you can kind of say maybe winning or different things, but there was definitely things. I mean, if you look at one of the goal opportunities where Owen Cody got the ball and one-handed threw the ball down, slapped it across the box, and Declan Hannon drops it, and suddenly there's a scramble around goal mouth. Like, that was completely uncharacteristic. And if I think of games where we as a defence were like that, I do think of league games, but I think of games where, like, the heads, not to say the heads weren't right, but, you know, you maybe just weren't ready for the match as you should have been. And maybe training had been going really well in the run into it. Maybe games have been going really well. And that in itself is a dangerous place to be. Like, I remember Brian saying to us in the dressing room one day, we were after winning all our games in the league, maybe 3 or 4 games into it. Training was going really well. It was, I do remember whatever year it was off the back of an All-Ireland winning year. So, you know, the feeling was good. And Brian just held everyone back and said, listen, lads, it's going a bit too good for my liking nearly. That almost, essentially, that's what he's saying. And sure, lads kind of laughed. He's like, look at lads, you know, like, you know, winning softens you as well, you know. So just, you know, be careful that there's not something coming on the tracks here that completely derails you, where you go out and you take such a hammer. Like, if you look at 2011, Tipperary, you know, absolutely cleaned Waterford out of it in the Munster final, and they went through a fairly. I can't remember who they played in the semi-final. I think it could have been Cork or whoever, but they came through it and were expected to kind of, I suppose, blitz us in the final, but maybe just weren't ready because things had been going so well. They presumed that they would turn up on the day and they would win. Similar, I would say, the following year with us in 2012 against Skehill. You know, we turned up to an Leinster final, and Tommy always framed it afterwards. We turned up to play, he turned up to win. Where it was a case of, if you're off by 5%, the other team smelt it. The other team was already, you know, savage to go out and attack you. And I just think that Kilkenny at the weekend, it meant a bit more to Kilkenny this match, I will say that. And Kilkenny definitely came out of the traps. Well, they didn't come out of the traps straight away, but they responded really well, and there was an aggression about them. They were hitting hard. They were willing to maybe take a yellow card here or there, but they were definitely sending a message to say, well, look, we may as well throw everything at these lads. And it maybe just wasn't something Limerick were ready for on the day. But like he said, and we've said it enough, that look, Limerick will move on from this. They'll take stock of it. I'm sure John Kiley has plans in tow as it is that will, you know, have these lads ready. And what it may even mean is that, you know, the likes of the Adam English and Donncha O'Donnell and these lads who we have been saying, will they or won't they make a championship panel? You know, John Kiley will say, or not to say panel, sorry, championship starting 15. John Kiley may be saying, look, to the more established players, look, these lads are fighting hard. These lads are performing. Like Adam English was lively at the weekend, and he was shown, like, and he could maybe say that, well, lads, the more he could light a fire under a few of the more established lads and say, look, you know, when the backs were to the walls, how did we react? So I think certainly the Limerick train will get up and going this week with whatever training camp they have.
We've a million questions about referees, by the way. So without even having to surmise this, I think all three of us, because we were WhatsApping each other while the match was on Saturday, and you know, some of the decisions really were questionable. I mean, the thing is, Skehill, like, letter of the law, the little flick out from Owen Cody will get you a second yellow card. But it's so rare that you would see that being handed as a second yellow becomes a red.
I have to slightly disagree with you about letter of the law. You know, there's certain, a striking action, right? Yeah, fair enough, is a red, okay? But there's ones that are, it's very hard to explain, because I can pick numerous cases whereby, you know, people will come at me and they'll say, look, by the letter of the law, as you said, Will, and by the rule book, he deserves to be a yellow card. But a lot of sports, right, is not by the book. There has to be an element of common sense, an element of feel of the game, an element of seeing what's in front of you, nearly judging the intent of the player. And like, Owen Curry didn't intend to do any damage. You know, I just think he was a touch late. That's all. Yeah. And I think a second yellow card is over punishment, really over punishment. And at the time it happened, I just said to myself, well, fuck you, you're after ruining the game, James Owens. You know what I mean? Because this was such a good game up to that point that I said this could open the door for Limerick to come through. Now, they didn't come through the door. Limerick or Kilkenny closed it again, but there was a whole host of instances whereby I was looking at calls made by James Owens, and I just couldn't get myself into his mind space, if you know what I'm saying. I'm always trying to put myself into his mind space to see what's he thinking, what rule has been broken here in today's senior game. And like, there was not just one, Will, or 5. There was 10 or 15 incidents yesterday whereby there was frees given. Is one thing, but then there was cards given, and the cards given were so, you know, innocuous, like so below the level of display issuing a card, that I was actually in a state of confusion watching the game. I said, I'm not sure what I'm watching, you know. And like, I was actually questioning how he interprets the tackle, because if you look at all of the referees, whether it be people who are at the pinnacle of it, like John Keenan, you know, the arm tackle is commonplace, to say, but like, James Owens kept pulling it. Like, he kept pulling the arm tackle, he kept pulling body tackles, he kept doing this. You know what I mean? I was like, what is that about? You know, because we've seen that for the last 5 years. I think the only one he got right yesterday was the Peter Casey one, and that's because he got assistance from his umpires. You know, I just think and I hate the bone referees, and I'd love to move on from everything bar the referee. I'd love to say about the game and talk about goals, etc. But ultimately, that some of the decisions that were made by James were so unbelievably bad that we're forced to talk about it. And like, I'm straight up here, I am questioning his involvement in the championship going forward, because of all the referees nationally over the last number of years, big incidents happen. A lot of the time it's him. Do you know what I mean? A lot of the time it's him. And I'm not trying to badger the man. I know they're doing a job, and all the people can throw that he's an amateur, etc. I understand that. But when you're actually, you know, becoming the central focus of the game, and you're actually moving the game in a direction that shouldn't go yourself, I think it's time to have a look in the mirror and say, look, this maybe isn't for me. And I know there's a shortage of referees, because I understand that, I get that. But there has to be others out there who are maybe younger, who maybe are on the circuit a bit only for a couple of years, but they have to be able to do better than that, because ultimately, every day I see him, the minute he becomes the referee of a game, I'm saying this is going to be an issue. He's going to take over the game. And like it was yesterday, he did. So maybe, Murph, what do you think? Am I over-exaggerating? Like, sometimes I do, but that's the way I feel, and I think it's truthful.
Yeah. Well, look, I suppose as a Kilkenny man, I maybe seem to be biased, but I know, look, in fairness, I was looking at the game. Like, last week we had, was it Thomas Welch with the Limerick Galway game? And like, in fairness, even though I know there was a little bit of, I suppose, online people were maybe a bit upset about a few of the challenges.
By the way, you took quite a bit of criticism last week, where it was like, you said that there was 2 or 3 decisions wrong, and Sell went, I think he did a decent game. So
yeah.
You took a bit of criticism as well. Go on.
Yeah, he did take criticism, yeah. And like, we even said that we acknowledged that last week, but we kind of, I thought that, given everything that was at his disposal, I thought he had a good game last week, because I was saying, well, if I was in that position, a few of the tackles that went in, you know, let's say Davy Burke's one where it was a red, yeah, it was a red, but, you know, it happened so quickly, and where he was with the conditions he was in, I was saying, Jesus, could he have seen that? And I'm not sure. And I understand that people would be, you know, when you're sitting at home and you're watching it on telly and you have a plain sight of it, fine. This week, you know, between James Owens and Liam Gordon, I had a look at it, and I thought Liam Gordon had a really good game. You know, I was looking at comparing tackles, and, you know, there was an inconsistency across both games in terms of what was a yellow and what wasn't, what was a free and what wasn't. And I thought Liam Gordon was very consistent about what he was doing, and I just felt a big inconsistency about what James Owens was doing, where, you know, I looked at Garrod Hegarty's, he was coming out against Richie Reid, and I just felt it was good, strong play where he just used Richie Reid's momentum, pushed him aside and kept going. And I was, as a Kilkenny man watching the game, I was going, this is actually harsh on Garrod Hegarty. Straight away, I mean, when I saw, you know, Owen Cody being sent off, I mean, Declan Hannon didn't react. You know, it was a hurl trying to flick the ball, hit him on the knee. Declan Hannon goes, yeah, right, grand, that's sore, but he's not looking for anything, obviously. And sends him off. I mean, it's not a sending off. Like, you know, you don't, it's not the case you apply the rule differently when a fella's on a yellow card, but, you know, you do have a common sense that you take a fella. Like, I was sent off by Colm Lyons before. It's my only red card, but I was sent off by Colm Lyons. But he warned me before it. Like, you know, he gave me a yellow. He warned me before it, and he kind of said, you know, you want to be careful, like, and sure, then sent me off. But, like, you know, there's an understanding there. Now, I understand if a player's on the yellow and he goes in with a very high tackle or a hard tackle and you send him off, well, that's fine, because, I mean, it's warranted. But I even look at, let's say, Jake Morris being sent off against Tipp, and, you know, Jake Morris had fouled a few times, and, you know, Liam Gordon had spoke to him and things as well. So it was just, I felt the inconsistency across the two games, but I felt the inconsistency lay more with James Owens in terms of what he was calling. Like, realistically, by what I saw yesterday, he should have sent off Jordan Malloy at the end of the game as well, by what he was calling, because Jordan Malloy was on a yellow and he did a bit of a high tackle on, I can't remember which Limerick player it was, but he did a bit of a high tackle. And I actually said to myself, right, there's Jordan Malloy is going to be sent off here now. And he wasn't. So I was completely confused. I actually felt the frustration of the Limerick crowd, to be honest, because I think they maybe bore the brunt of it a little bit more than Kilkenny at times. I think after Owen Cody was sent off, where we felt we were hard done by, I think maybe Kilkenny got a few calls then that maybe probably balanced it out, that frustrated Limerick people then and frustrated Limerick players. So there was an inconsistency, and that's something that I would have felt frustrated with before.
What's this crack of, like, I hear this argument, right? It balances it out. Is that him trying to balance it out? Do you think after he sent off Cody, he's going through the game again and goes, shit, I probably got that wrong. Time to even it up a bit.
I don't know because, I mean, he didn't have much qualms about sending off Cody. And like in the moment, if you are in doubt, as Cody's coming over to you, you often see referees taking out the book, and that's taking out kind of deciding, right, am I going to take here or am I going to give a yellow? What am I going to do? And they have time, So I don't think you'd make a rash decision in the moment like that for Cody and then go, right, actually, I may just deliberately now, I suppose, give a few frees back. But nevertheless, there was a thread of inconsistency along the way that was just, I couldn't figure out what the next free was going to be called for, and that was the problem. And I think as a player, that is frustrating because you really just don't know. You're walking around on eggshells because you're going, what is going to be blown here? And I'm killing my own team's momentum, but I don't really understand what I'm doing wrong because never mind the last match, it's the last play even. That's as far as it's going back where. Well, that was a free in the last play, but it's not a free now, or that was a yellow card. Jesus, I did a higher tackle in the last one and I didn't get anything. So like, it was so inconsistent that I think it actually took from the game, to be honest. It was teed up to be a really good game. You could see both teams going at it. And I think it just actually, it became the elephant in the room that we don't know what's about to happen next.
But where I came through the two games this weekend was, I'm not sure what the definition of a tackle is anymore, because I don't know how you actually police it, because you see the spare arm now on the tackle and they're trying to pull back the hurley arm and that's, to me, that's again by the letter of the law, by the book, that's a foul. So a lot of these tackles where you get bottled up or where the spare arms of the tackle, I don't know how referees are supposed to call that. The only way I do see the call it is that if the grab a jersey, go up around the neck. But like for Gordon today, I thought he policed the spare arm really well. But for James Owen, I thought he policed it really bad. And that sounds bad as I'm sitting here going, I can't know what's what, but there's ones that are quite innocuous and really not freeze, and he was giving them, whereas Liam Gordon was saying, right, if you break through the tackle, I'll let you off, and that's what happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas I just know I'm not going to say that James Owens should be removed from the circuit. I'm not saying that, but I just wonder, like, is his time up? Because do you know what I mean? John Keenan was his time was unfortunately brought up because of his age. But like, are we in charge now? Where like the GA have to look at this and say, right, James, it's time to move you off national level, and not demote you, but you know what I'm saying? Yeah,
I don't know what the guidelines are on it, like, but like, even to flip it over to the other side, one thing I did notice about Liam Gordon, like, and it just because of the match yesterday, I was kind of watching Liam Gordon to see what he does, and what I thought he actually did really well was that, he'd blow free or he'd let it on or whatever he was doing, but he seemed to be communicating with the players quite well, and that's
brilliant speaker.
Yeah, he's very good.
In game, I don't know. Have you ever had a game with him?
I obviously must have, but I mustn't have fouled the whole lot during the game because I don't remember talking.
He's extremely calm and level, right? And he talks to you what you did wrong.
Yeah.
And like you could be at him, like, and you could raise your voice to a certain decibel level. I bet, right? He remains the same level, and he speaks back to you, like, and tells you what you're at. So so you get live information during the game, which is excellent. And
it's good. It's good for the head as well, because, like, players are constantly, when you have that much adrenaline and you're getting hit and wherever, there's a possibility that a bit of anger could creep into it there. But when lads are explaining it to you, like, I saw Willie Connors at one stage chatting to him, and he was kind of having a laugh because there was some sort of a free anyway. Someone else got fouled, and the person that got fouled got up, and he was saying something to him anyway. And your man was like, "Yeah, that's grand, no bother." And it just seemed like a good kind of a relationship they were having there. I know it's a separate kind of a story, but a few years ago we played Clare and Ennis, and I kind of Podge, what's the name of the referee from Carlow there? Oh God, I can't even think. Yeah, Pod O'Dwyer. Yeah, we were fleeting back defended. Now, granted, there was three of us in the full back line with green helmets. It was myself, Shane Prendergast, and Joey Holden. But I was coming from the left half back position, running back, and the play was over on the far side, and it came through on goal, and everybody came through. But Joey had basically sledged whoever it was going through. He was baiting him like an ass as he was going through. By the time the ball went over the bar or something, he gave the free, but then he called me back. He was like, he was going to book me, and I said, "Jesus, Pod, that wasn't what are you booking me for?" He goes, "You were hitting Shane O'Donnell there, or whoever." I was like, "That wasn't me," and. But he actually listened to me. I was like, "Pod," he was just going, "Look, I'm having none of it. I'm booking you." I said, "Pod, will you at least please talk to your umpire or your linesman?" I came from the other side of the pitch. And he did. And he went over and he spoke to the linesman. The linesman said, no, that was Joey Holden. He went, grand. And he went, that's fine. But even that, like, as in, I mean, I know that's maybe a very, narrow case that I'm given there. But it was just that communication. At least you knew there was an understanding there that you can get something wrong here, but as long as we communicate it, that's okay. and on we go. We had a laugh about it and move on. But I felt a bit of frustration from even seeing players now on Saturday. I felt there was just so
communicate. He doesn't communicate. It's very well known. We know very well that he doesn't communicate at all. It's just pure silence, which is very, very frustrating and a bit disrespectful, if you ask me.
And my take-home message here is that Murph is a snitch and got Joey Holden booked.
Just about Joey wasn't on the yellow.
Well, I was already on the yellow, so.
Oh, yeah. See, that's an important detail.
That's clever.
I'm fairly sure in the same game, I didn't retreat quickly enough for a Podge Collins free, and he rose it up and he slapped it off me. But I got booked, so it was going right. I'm on the yellow here now, so I kind of had to rat Joey out for that one, unfortunately. Yeah.
Fair enough. There's loads of questions we want to get to, but this one has a bit of levity away from a very serious topic there, and it comes in from Kieran O'Donovan. Get a vet on to talk about the pigeon, as the the Porky Queeve pigeon on Saturday, or do the lads have any animal on the pitch related stories themselves? So I asked the lads just before we started, and we unearthed 2 photos which we can talk about here. First of all, Division 1A, February 2012, James Skehill with a dog. It's Galway against Dublin. He looks possibly annoyed having to carry this dog off the pitch. Skehill, give us the story. What's going on with this dog on screen at the moment?
I don't think I'd use the word annoyed. And bear in mind now, I come from a farm background, so I'm not used to it. I'm okay with dirt and animals, right? But this dog was so dirty, right? And I mean, it was a league game in 2012. He's on the pitch. He's beside the goal. And in fairness, he was wagging the tail, so he was friendly enough. But as I'm going down to him, and I can see him and go, geez, I honestly thought he had rabies. He was that bad. In my mind, I pick him up and going, I have no opportunity to wash my hands now. So why didn't I just shoo him off? But here I am picking him up going, oh, Jesus, But I left him down nice and soft. I don't know where he came from, that dog.
How long was he on the pitch before you took him off?
Dublin were on the attack and he was there beside me. Like he was wagging the tail, looking to get rubbed. The way dogs go on their back. With the belly facing up. And he's like, rubber belly. And I'm like, get off, get off. Out dog. You know what I mean? And then Dublin put the ball, I think they put it wide. And so I went to go pick him up. And then as I'm going towards him, he sees my hands coming. He then starts to move. And I just said, don't do it to me. And then you can hear the crowd kind of half giggling. I'm like, oh shit, here I'm going to be chasing the dog now for the next 30 seconds. But then I said, and then he lied down again. I picked him up and then I put him out over the wall at the end. I don't know where he came from, probably around the terrace houses. But yeah, that's not the incident.
Do lads bring Jack Russells to games? I mean, I know it was a thing that used to be years ago where I actually was at an Aussie rules match, the international rules. I was there that year. Do you know the dog came onto the pitch?
Oh, it's amazing.
Actually got a few touches on the ball, which was remarkable.
Yeah.
But I remember going that day, I was like, did that dog wander in off the street? Which I hope is probably the only explanation. Or did someone bring like a Jack Russell to the game? Like, I mean,
you couldn't bring a dog.
How would you bring
a dog?
Well, into Croke Park especially, like the idea of say some of the smaller grounds around the country where potentially mick on the gate and you walk in with your dog potentially, but I can't imagine you walk your dog into Croke Park.
Oh jeez, I can't see a situation
you can imagine a situation if you did, you brought your dog to Croke Park, you're at the international rules, you're sitting there and you're kind of watching the game and you have a look down to see where your man has gone.
Fenton! Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and he is chasing Darrow around the field or some lad from Geelong or something.
Murph, you've seen that video.
What video? Oh, Fenton.
The Fenton video. Oh, Jesus Christ, Fenton, you're after the deer. Imagine seeing a dog abroad the pitch. That's not my dog.
Oh, Jesus. Really.
Well, I'm pretty sure Murph's animal story is from Croke Park, isn't it? This is the Peregrine Falcon.
Yeah, that was that is the most suspect photo I've seen. Like, if you try to explain that to someone, it was 2014. I'm fairly sure it was the game we played against Limerick in the torrential rain.
Yeah.
And like obviously Croke Park, like this is something the players don't kind of realize is that, or you don't know about before you go out. You're focused on the game. But like Croke Park or the GA could have some sort of a show on at halftime, like the Mary Wallopers could be playing, or there could be a lad out in stilts, or you don't know what's about to you run out in the pitch.
Mary Wallopers.
They're a good band, yeah. Like I ran out the time we played Limerick in 2019. I ran out on the pitch. I went in to go to the toilet before we went for the parade, and I came running out. There's lads standing in the tunnel coming out, and he was standing right in the middle of it, and I was going, "What the fuck is this lad standing in the tunnel for?" And I was kind of half giving out and I was running out the tunnel. It was Shane Lowry. He was after winning the British Open and they brought him out to to meet the crowd. But I was giving out because I was like, we didn't know. Like, you just don't know these things are happening. But the one with the Falcon was 2014. We were warming up and it was a bad enough day. We were poking around. And this Falcon, the person that was holding the falconer, I presume.
Falconer, probably, yeah.
Yeah. He was obviously flying this fella around Croke Park. It was part of, like, I think Emirates had taken over a sponsorship or something. And we were poking around, and suddenly something whipped by us. And we were like, Kieran Joyce turned to me and said, "What the fuck was that?" I went, "What?" He goes, "Did you see an enormous bird?" I was like, it's Croke Park. It's probably a seagull or something. Okay, no, this was brown or black or something like. And this went on. So Croke Park had announced this to people that this bird was going to bring in the ball for throw-in and so on. The bird also presented the man of the match award to Seamus Hickey, but not to be bad on Seamus Hickey. Seamus Hickey gave a very emotional, interview after the game about how disappointed it was to lose by 2 points, and it was brilliant. He really showed the emotion. And then they said, "And now Seamus Hickey will present you with your man of the match award." And a fella who looks like he's from Thurles comes in, togged out in the gear. Not to be bad, but that man may be from the United Arab Emirates, but he'll be from Ballinasloe, and presents Seamus Hickey with the man of the match award. And I remember watching back the match going, "What? There's the fucking bird again. What was going on? What is this bird?" So that apparently was a crack, but that's the problem.
That could be his uniform, Murph. That could be the falconer's uniform.
Could be down in Tullamore right now as we speak, sitting at the bar, and I don't know, but I just thought the whole thing was very suspect.
That was the Etihad sponsorship, I think, around about that time as well. Okay, this can go to you, Murph, because you're a specialist on this. Coming in from Jerry Walsh, 83. Why can't defenders defend one-on-one anymore? Gone like football. Defenders are leaving players get the ball and then tackling. Obviously, one-on-one came into effect quite a bit in the Limerick-Kilkenny game particularly.
Yeah, now I will preempt this by saying I saw that comment before we came on. Jerry Welch, I told a story about Jerry Welch in one of our live pods in the one down in Limerick. Jerry Welch is a man who is a fan of one-on-one defending. He's actually from Carrick-on-Shore. Great hurler. I think Owen Kelly actually named him as being the stickiest defender he'd ever marked. So he's a man who's well, I suppose, versed in the dark arts of defending. But I once saw Jerry near almost choke poor Seamus Callan out of it in a Defence Forces versus Bank of Ireland match one time. So I told that story when Podge Collins was on the stage anyway. But the one-on-one defending, there certainly was a few instances where the one-on-one defending over the weekend. The one thing I would kind of say with that is I've seen lots of instances where defenders are isolated one-on-one, and it's very much last chance saloon. It's very much like that. You know that if you, I suppose, drag a player down at this stage, you're probably going to, be in a lot of trouble.
Black card and pen, potentially.
Yeah, it's hard to get close to him as it is. But also what a lot of people don't see is, if Jerry is referring to the individual situations there, like let's say where, let's say for TJ's goal at the weekend, for Jake Morris, was it Jake Morris's goal? Was it the goal?
Hogan,
yeah. So he was isolated as well. What oftentimes you don't see going on there is that once the player gets isolated inside, the fullback gets isolated with the full forward, usually the full forward starts running fairly hard there to try and pull and drag the cornerback all over the place and basically get to a stage where you're shaking him. And when that ball is being delivered in, you're kind of actually getting caught on the back foot. And if you're watching it on telly, you maybe don't see it, but good forwards will do it where they'll, they know they've space inside, so they start running. They don't stay static because the defender wants you to stay static. And by the time that ball arrives in, the defender is, nearly on his last legs at times, and has been running fairly hard for about 20 seconds before that. But I'd still agree with him. Like, there certainly has been instances where one-on-one defending, like the old thing of just getting up close to your man, getting a hurling, flicking it, spoiling it. Lads have been kind of standing off their men, I think, a small bit. And we have seen a few examples of it there, of just the basics, getting in beside them, spoiling them. As a defender, all you have to do is spoil them. You don't have to do a whole lot else. You don't have to win the ball. Spoil them and wait for the cavalry to arrive, get the ball down the ground, stand in beside them. So, yeah, Jerry has a point there. We have seen instances where I suppose the old art of defending maybe wasn't on display. But I would say in the defender side, certainly at the moment, we spoke about Limerick having defenders isolated. Being isolated on the full back line is a really tough place to be. We saw it with Tipperary, or not with Tipperary, with Clare having lads isolated, with Adam Hogan being isolated. Like, it's a disaster because you're damned if you do and damned if you don't in many ways. Like, if you go out in front of the forward, preparing for that ball to come in, that forward will disappear behind you. We've seen Aaron Gillan do it several times where he once he knows you're not looking at him anymore, you're goosed. But then if you stand behind the forward, well, you're giving him the advantage then, because he can now dictate where he wants that ball. The player out the field can see it. The player landed in front of him. So in the modern game, it's a very tough thing. Like certainly when I was cornerback,
it's impossible, but
it's impossible. Yeah,
do you think even the modern fullback is gone now? Sorry, the fullback of old.
It is. Like, I mean, I would say like the 2016 final, like where was it 116 was scored off us in the full back line. Like that was one of the first times I really saw that open space of in front of you, where your half back line, I suppose, unknowingly got dragged out, and now you're suddenly isolated. And that's the forward's dream. Like, to be isolated with the back is the dream. And consistently isolated is a very tough place to be. So like that's something now that we mentioned it with Limerick, it's uncharacteristic. And the reason it's uncharacteristic is because it's a really dangerous thing to be doing when you're isolating or you're leaving your full backline isolated. And the thing is about it is most of the time when a full backline has to attack the ball, they have to attack it at 100%, as in terms of sprinting at that ball. Yeah. Whereas you see halfbacks, midfield, half forwards, they can tend to run hard and ghost onto a ball. But that's different to, flat out sprinting, going back into your position, flat out sprinting. So if you consistently expose a full backline to that, the cracks will appear in the armour and you're going to be in bother. So
but even today's game, Murph, like you've got a 2-man from forward line a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So like you've got space in front of you and a lot of space. And most teams nowadays are synchronized. So the forward knows where the ball is going, but you don't really have a good idea. Yeah. And even if you do have an idea, the forward always has that. He knows, like, I know where I want the ball, so he's a step or two in front of you, and that little bit of time is all you need. And they're so effective nowadays. How do you like? So if you play in front of a guy now, like he'd lose you at the far side. And you look like an ass. Do you know what I mean?
I got onto when I actually started playing cornerback. It was only 2008 when I was under 21 with Kilkenny. Started playing cornerback. Mickey Welsh put me in there, and I was like, "This is simple." Like, I mean, you just run when the halfback gets the ball, run forward, because at that time, halfbacks weren't looking up, or midfielders they were just striking ball. And if you knew, like, if I was looking down the line and I knew your man is after winning a great ball, but he doesn't have to look because he's not required to look and he's just striking it in. Run out in front, and you were winning balls. It's like this was consistently it. But the game changed once really it was a requirement from the half back line and midfield to get your head up and look at the forward where you're putting it. And like I would have really started experiencing that then against, like I said, Tipperary 2016. But even then, Limerick really brought that in, of where we would have seen like Graham Mulcahy, maybe Seamus Flanagan, Aaron Gillan, when we started playing them around 2017, 2018, where they actually had a plan, where they knew what they were doing. They would go like linear, and suddenly we're now, we're not a flat back defense. We're actually now stacked on the D, and these lads are breaking left and right into space. And there's your problem now. Like I would have started my career starting on the 21, let's say on the 14, running in a straight line towards, your right half back position towards midfield. Now it's changed that you're probably starting towards where the full back is, and you're breaking left and right. It's actually gone completely the other direction. So the landscape has changed. And like, if you watch games on telly the whole time, you'll never see this. But if you go to games, obviously, as most people do, you'll go to games. If you actually watch the full back lines now and just have a look at old games 20 years ago, completely different. So the requirement and the position is essentially gone at this stage. You have a full back that holds that position, but the cornerbacks are everywhere and anywhere,
Mm-hmm. So obviously, you want to get into Clare and Tipperary a bit here. You can kind of group a few comments in here. People have asked, like, does this make for example, Kevin Ford, does Kilkenny versus Clare now make for a better league final, given these two won't touch each other until the All-Ireland knockout stage? I think very simply, yes, would have to be the answer to that. If this had been Clare and Limerick, we would have been preparing for two teams who would have been completely shadowboxing, while now there's an opportunity for Clare to go at it, to get that little bit of extra confidence, maybe even of winning a national title, which they haven't done so since 2016, to set them up nicely. For Munster, for Kilkenny, they're able to work their way through the Leinster Championship a little bit more. Why not go and try and win this and get a win against Clare to kind of get the season rocking? So therefore, we've got two teams who've got every reason to go for it. And quite a few of the Clare fans that tweeted us over the last couple of hours were saying exactly the same. There's no reason for Clare now to hold back because of the pairings coming into this league final. David Byrne makes an interesting point as well. He wonders, did Clare approach today's game in the same manner if Limerick had won yesterday, given that they're both set to meet in 2 weeks' time? I do wonder. Like, I mean, Clare obviously flew out of the traps. There was probably every incentive when it was Kilkenny as an opponent as opposed to Limerick as an opponent. And That was some start, Skehill, during the game as well. 8 unanswered points inside the first 11 minutes. I mean, the game will ultimately come down to, we talk about the freeze going wrong for Tipperary during it, but there was a start from Clare and there was a finish from Clare today. Both were very impressive. I thought they were the better team over the 70 minutes generally, but they came flying out today.
They absolutely came flying out, and they couldn't miss a beat. Everything they did was nearly to perfection. Will, I thought their defensive structure was really good. They basically closed down space for the Tipp forwards. Every ball that was delivered into Tipp forward line, the backs were there on arrival, so there was no space at all. It's amazing because they got 8 points in about 10 minutes, and I wrote down here during the first 10 minutes, I checked what teams have scored and see can we project what they score at the end. My projection was 56 points they were on course for. That's how electric they were. You know what I mean? It was that kind of level. It was so crazy. And McDara was very, very, I think it was the 7th point. I think David really scored it, and he kept on saying fake on spots. Like, look at the space, because Tipperary were playing at times with only 2 sweepers and trying to protect the inside line too much. They were very well structured on their own puck out, but then in open play, because they had a couple of defenders back, that Clare just absolutely annihilated them out around the middle. And they got shots off after shots off. Like, Clare had just, I could be correct here, but they had 9, if not 10 scorers in the first half alone. I think all their forwards scored, and their midfield, and potentially one of the backs scored in the first half alone, which is a crazy statistics. Like, it's very rare you hear of 6 scores, 7, not mind 10. So they came out really well. And to Tipp's credit, they battled back. Like, after the first 2 minutes, they won the second half 1-7 to 1-6. So they got back within range. But I do think they were lucky enough to be 7 down at half time. I think the loss of Mark Rogers contributed to that because Clare missed a couple of frees. Not to mind all the frees that Tipperary missed. I think I counted 10 frees, lads, that they missed with 4 different takers.
Yeah, it was not. I think it was officially logged at 9 missed frees. The free takers, it went in this order. It was Jason Ford, then went to Garrod O'Connor, then Willie Connors hit a few, then Sean Ryman's hit them towards the end of the game. So 19 wides. Yeah, 19 wides in all, and 9 misses. That's not good enough.
No, it's
a game
not good
that
enough.
Ultimately is decided by roughly that margin by the end of it.
I think, but if I'm going away, right, it's easy point to freeze, and look, hopefully you can get that with individual practice. That's an individual skill as opposed to a collective skill for me. And if it's easier for me to nail down an individual skill that is collective. So the freeze, I think they have free takers. I think the conditions played into it, especially the breeze. But the collective skill here was the defense, and like 10 scores signifies a very, very loose defense. So that's why really concerned for me. And like I was looking at Ronan Maher, I thought his body language was telling me, like in the first 15 minutes, he was pulling his hair out because there was just runners from all sides and there was no real defensive structure. And in those instances, like I think that Tipperary should just say, right, let's stop the rot. After the 4th point, just drop everybody back into a deep section and try stem this. But they let it go to 5, 6, 7, 8, and the winning margin ultimately was about around the 8 points. So, like I know in my time, Murph, in your time, if you can feel the run coming against you, you can really feel it. This is too much. It's too soon. You know what I mean? So let's just pull everybody back for a couple of minutes. Let's get some tackles going and then go forward. Nearly like pressing the reset button. But they didn't do that. So I think when Cahill goes away today, I think he'll be happy with the influence that his substitutes have. But I think he'll be very disappointed with his defensive structure and from senior players, Michael Breen inclusive as well, how they allow this 8 points to happen. But look, they showed signs. They showed signs of a real good performance. Take away the first 8 points, which is a big takeaway. It was a draw game, essentially. Do you know what I mean? And they had some fantastic finishes and good, as I said, influences from their subs. I've noted here, like even the goal, let's say, from your man, was it Hayes? Sean Hayes, is it? Sean Hayes, yeah. Sean Hayes, super finish. Like Jake Morris, really good movement. He got sent off, but nothing for anything terrible. So, but Clare, I think I circled David Fitzgerald, and I think he's at a level now. If you remember Garrett Hegarty, not last year, the year previous.
I was going to say, you can take this question now. So we had 2 questions that come in. It's like, is David Fitzgerald on form right now the best player in the country?
Well, I don't see anybody else who was challenging him at the minute because he's Mr. Consistent. It's a bit like we were talking about David Clifford off air, and David Clifford is awesome because he plays well every day, Yeah. And David Fitzgerald is doing the same thing. He's playing well every day. Even go back to last year's semi-final against Kilkenny where Clare weren't hectic. David Fitzgerald was really good. You know what I mean? And every league game he plays every game, mind you. Every league game he plays, every championship game he plays, he's always coming away with, I had 8 tackles here off him, like 8 tackles off your wing forward. 1-3, I think he got. You know what I mean? 21 possessions. Like, what? Like, that's awesome stuff. So he's at the level, if you remember, Garrett Hegarty was like head and shoulders above everybody. maybe 2-3 years ago, and he's having that influence now on the Clare team, not just on the opposition. He's actively, like, surging them forward, if you like. His goal is as good a goal as you've seen, because he's coming so powerful. You don't think he's moving at the pace he was, and what a finish and what timing and what smarts to the way he took it down. So for me, he's the best player. He's the best player of the Clare team at present, and he's probably he's not probably. He is the best player on form in the country at the minute. Or currently on form. Now that can change as we go into championship, but like he's producing the goods and producing them every day.
Murph, where are you standing on Fitzgerald's form right now?
Oh yeah, I mean, I was looking at him going like, Jesus, we like facing him barreling through, because the power of him, the speed of him, coming through. Like, the only option is to actually foul him, because you can't. I don't think there's a player that could go and hit him fairly when he's at full tilt. That wouldn't be anything other than a foul if you're actually to stop him, really, because he's
100 kilos, Murph. He's definitely 100 kilos, isn't he?
I never weighed him, to be honest. Skehill, I'll weigh him next week there and find out. But he must be. He must be around it, like,
Don't get smart to me now, right?
What you asked me that for? Never even met the man. He's 100 kilos.
I reckon he's 100 kilos. I saw him last year after the Dublin game in the Gaelic grounds in the quarter final. He took the shirt off and I said, "Yeah, that's a 100 kg man."
Yeah.
So if someone can tell us what weight he is, that'll help.
He's definitely the player of the league at the moment, and de facto then he's the best player at the moment in the country. But again, that's like very much on form at the moment. Like, if you have one of, I suppose, the lads who, let's say, have won hurler of the year in the last few years, or Tony Kelly or whoever, like, these lads, if they turn it on for a few weeks, I think they take the mantle. But he's so consistent, which is a huge compliment in itself, because oftentimes it's not a quality we talk about enough with players. But like Diarmuid Ryan, in fairness, I think you could probably speak about him in the same context, that he's very consistent. Always shows up, gets on a lot of ball, has great influence on the game, and when you could probably point to nearly 99% of other players in the league this year have warranted being taken off at different stages. That's fine. That's normal. That's just part of being a player. But you couldn't say that about David Fitzgerald. He's just been immense. But like, again, I know I'm going back to it, but it's just his power is just something else. I mean, like, even seeing him there towards the end when he's getting a few points, like, he doesn't strike that ball. He just absolutely baits the ball out of the park, like, and the goal at full tilt, running at an angle, the power he got behind it. Like, there's lots of players that wouldn't generate that power of let's say, a standing run up to a ball. They wouldn't generate it. Him at full tilt.
Do you think do you think he's one of the highest scoring efficiencies in the country? I very rarely misses. Well,
he must be, because he's very he makes a lot of good decisions, as in, if he's running through the ball, he looks off the shoulder, sees ranting there, but he knows, he has a good feel for his spatial awareness to see, is there anyone off my shoulder here now, or can I take a shot? And he generally only shoots when he's moving towards goal as well, which is another trait of him. Like, he's not one of these boys over the shoulder. He took one standing today, I think it was his third point. He was at midfield, striking into the wind, and he struck it out over the net from the midfield line. Like, I mean, again, just power. So I would say, what definitely you're right there, Skehill. I don't have the stats on it, but I would say what feeds into his high scoring rate is that just the decisions he makes. Like I said, striking when running towards goal. Running towards goal is really good because he's so big, he's so powerful. It's just a lot of simple things on paper make sense.
He's because he always seems to be coming on the end of a pass. Sorry, coming to a pass facing the goal. So it's rare you kind of see him, coming out with back to goal, having to get a turn a ledge and go. He always seems to be going forward. So as you said yourself, when he's coming at pace, it's like stopping the horse when the gate's half open. Like, just let him off, and round him up again. You know what I mean? It's just, I think a technical skill he got, and you made note of it there. When you're running with the ball, it's easier to score. Yeah, shoot in an accurate way. When you're kind of standing, or on a swivel, it's harder. So I just think, but like, his technical ability for a man his size, and he's able to move and shift that weight at that pace. They coincide together, really complement each other, and he's a complete hurler, to be fair. I think he started off. Am I right in saying he started off wing back or centre back? Would that be right? No,
I think he was somewhere around wing back. I
think in 2018 he played wing back.
I could have, yeah.
We can fact check that one before we come back from the members pod. But right now, he's playing obviously a very important role, and like, this is a time as well where, and a few people have wondered about this, and it might be a bit. Maybe this is one for the week before the final, but there's a few lads wondering about, like, what happens now when O'Donnell comes back in, when Tony Kelly comes back in. These guys are ready to step back into the side, and there's lads who have performed well. Because a couple of things for Clare today that actually stand out too, right? So the Fitzgerald goal was actually the first goal they scored since the Cork game, which was right at the start of the league. So generally they've been outpointing teams up until now. And this is the first time in the league this year where it hasn't been decided by a puck of a ball. Because even their last game against Offaly was the very late Reedy free, and every other game has been in the balance throughout. So a little bit of a different game for Clare this time around. Maybe to open up a bit ahead of this. And a lot of the Clare supporters, again, I was just kind of having a quick read through while you guys were talking about Fitzgerald, really feel that they should actually go and have a right good go at this final now. Jerry Linan, one of them, saying, have to go for it now, Will. We've got a tangible sign of progress that the national title would bring, particularly when Limerick are not in the final. So Limerick not being involved really changes the game for them. And that was a question again from D Tux as well. So what happens when these guys come back in? Who do Clare pick? I think this is a good problem Skehill for Loan to have right now. We talked about the depth over the last couple of weeks. Here they are now. This is a bit of a statement performance that they've put in against a Tipperary team who did not play well today, but still there are jerseys to be fought for here now before the championship comes round.
Yeah, and sometimes, like, I suppose supporters and even pundits alike can be guilty of giving the jersey straight back to the players who are injured, who are missing, because your stock never goes down when you're missing. Your stock stays level or either goes up depending on how your team are doing. And like I know we're talking about Shane O'Donnell and Tony Kelly, etc. So they're obviously going to be in the team. But to be honest, McInerney's got to get back in. Ryan Taylor has to get back in. Yeah. Like, is he going to usurp Cathal Malone now or Dave Fitzgerald in the half hour then? The answer is no. He's not. So ultimately, it's a situation whereby Brian Lohan is looking at his team, and I think absolutely, if you have the chance or the opportunity to go for a national title with the squad you have at your disposal right now, lads who are perceived as some newcomers, go for it. Go hammer and tongs it, and what will be will be. I think the best thing to do is iron sharpens iron. I've never been in a situation or mindset as a manager or as a player when you get to a final whereby you're saying, let's just relax a bit now because we've got Limerick in a couple of weeks.
Are we willing to accept collectively here, by the way, because everyone goes 2022 and look at how good Waterford were and then it fell apart, that the reason Waterford had a bad year wasn't because Waterford won the league?
Not at all. That's bullshit.
Well, people seem to think this is it. Like, as if
no,
you better not win the league, because if you win the league, it might not work out, even if the evidence was Limerick last year.
I don't think so.
For some reason, though, since that year, people think, geez, you put too much into it.
Well, I think, let's say you're putting too much weight on win the league. I think there's so many factors behind the scenes there. Like, I've heard stories about what happened down in Waterford, about the load and the training they did immediately after the league. And maybe the word I'd use is potentially burnout, but that's a different matter entirely. But to answer your question, no, it's got nothing to do with it. The league is a national title. It's been going on for years, whereby teams who have won the league and then gone on to win the championship. So I don't think we can just even belittle the competition that much to say, don't win it for fear you don't win the championship, I think as well, I think the Clare players, obviously there'll be a lot of talk nationally about Limerick coming to Ennis, etc. But they'll be well focused in the league. They have an opportunity to get a national title medal, some of which haven't got one in 10 years. I think there's only probably is even a handful of lads who are left over from 2013, like John Conlon being one, Tony Kelly, Shane O'Donnell. I can't think of many more. You might Dave McInerney probably. Dave McInerney. So you might have 5 or 6 guys who've got national medals. The rest don't. So there's 30 lads there who will be chomping at the bit to get one. And like they're come few and far between. Because you know yourself, I'm not to get too deep in it, but your inter-county career goes so fast that whatever you get a chance to win something, go and take it. And then what will be in 2 weeks. But go win the game. And I think it really sets up for a really good final, because there's nothing as sure as Kilkenny. It's not in their psyche, to come up to a final kind of half-hearted. It's going to be a hammer tongs game. And I think it'll be very, very close to championship pace, if not nearly up to it.
Yeah. Tipp have obviously got a bit of work to do, and there's a couple of cutting comments, I would say, that have come in on Twitter about Tipp today, including, is it time to do away with the league semi-finals and have a bigger gap to the championship, which is a wider point. I don't think any of us would disagree that it probably would make sense to just have a league final. Any love for league semi-finals there?
No, sure, don't the football do that? The football just goes straight to leach finals, doesn't it?
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the 2 games of the weekend, but I could have done without them.
Exactly.
If we had turned around and said, who finished from the top?
What do you mean, Will? I could have done without them. Were you that busy with shopping that you had good?
My life would have moved on, Skehill. If this had been a break week and next week was the final and had been the 2 teams that finished top, which I think would have actually been Clare and Limerick, but anyway, never mind that. But say they had been the 2 teams who got to the final, they played one off, fine. There's been a break either side of it.
Could I say it's a little bit of a prima donna statement there? I really appreciate these 60 players putting their life on hold and the backroom teams for the weekend. But I was watching lots of things. I was watching Netflix. There was other options there to watch.
All the kid, I suppose.
Look, I said something very similar about the Division 3 and 4 Football League finals last week when everyone was saying, oh, but you wouldn't want to take away their day in Croke Park. And I was kind of going, like, winning the league
toss a coin. Will is saying toss a coin there, give it to whoever.
No, what Will was saying was, I think a seven game league is more than enough to first pass the post. Whoever finishes top of the table could be crowned as champions. And look, grand, people enjoy their day at Croke Park. For Division 1-2 teams in football, it means shag all, really. And we get ready for next weekend. For 3 and 4, really, you want to get promoted. That's the prize as opposed to going up to win a piece of silverware. They'll all say after that game, if they don't play well, Division 4, Division 3 next Saturday, they will say the most important thing was getting promoted. We didn't perform in the day. It's all about championship from here. It takes on a weird kind of different dimension to it. And even the Division 2A hurling final this coming weekend between Carlow and Laois, I'm sure both teams will want to win. It's two neighbours meeting in Netwatch Cullen Park on Sunday afternoon. But the reality is both teams have qualified for 1B already. The actual tangible benefit was getting promoted for next year. Piece of silverware is fairly secondary to it. You mightn't even remember who wins 2A, but what you want to do at the end of the year is, in Carlow's case, stay up in Leinster, and Laois's case, try and win the Joe McDonagh. It's bigger tasks in a few weeks' time rather than what happens this weekend. But yeah, the point on Tipperary was Tipperary barely fulfilled the fixture today, was one of the claims being made. It was like an open training session. I don't know about that, but how disappointing were Tipperary, Skehill, before we finish up the main pod?
I think for the first, as I mentioned, really, they went 8-0 down. I think the losing margin was 8 points. Is that right?
It was, yeah.
So essentially, for the next 65 minutes, like, it was a draw game. You know, with loads of opportunities missed. They came. I'm not sure they came in the right headspace, because I can't attest their headspace. I was just looking at their defensive structure, to be honest, and their defensive structure was all over the shop. So I was wondering, how much had they planned for this? You know, did they study Clare? Like, were they prep for this? Were they pumped for this? But even in the first 10 minutes, they didn't lay a finger on it. Even if you're getting beaten, you know, and there's points being scored against you, fair enough. But at least initiate some contact on the opposition. And there was just no contact. A lot of the Clare shots were done predominantly unopposed, with shots with not even a hurling in reach of the opposition. So it just signifies that there was really a lack of intent on behalf of the backs. So I can't imagine what kind of halftime team talk they had. But again, no more than what we said about Limerick today. I think this is an opportunity for Liam Cahill to go at his team. And I won't say dog them, but you know what I mean? He's got a prolonged period now, more so than others.
He is 5 weeks now because they've no game in the first week.
Yeah, so they're going to be under pressure in the next couple of weeks after that for sure. they'll be like, you know, they'll be well rattled over the next fortnight. And I think, to be honest, if you ask the players themselves, they'll only turn around and say, you know what, we deserve it. You know, we didn't play to our abilities whatsoever. There's a lot of people expected them to win the game. It was going to be tight. All of us said it was going to be tight, with Clare coming out on top by a bit. You know, I did not expect an 8-0 start. Really didn't, you know. And as I said, I don't think he'd be disappointed by the free taking. Yes, disappointed that it didn't go over, but I don't think he'd classify that as a long-term issue. His defensive structure, and yes, you can say I'm defensively minded, but they were terrible in the first 10 minutes, really bad. So that's an issue, and they don't have that many lads to come back into the defence. I'm trying to think of who's coming back. You know, McGrath is hurt. You know, who else is there to come back into this team? Like, is Cahill Barrett? Is he due to come back? Is he injured? Does anybody know?
I don't know his status at the moment.
Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's not as if there's a cavalry comeback, a bit like, you know, 5 or 6 lads that come in and rejuvenate the whole thing. So
the lads are feeling a little bit more confident, listeners, about the fact that Tipperary aren't going to qualify in the Munster Championship. That's what I'm taking from this.
Hey, hold on. Keep them words to yourself, right?
We'll be the only snippet again this week now.
I'm talking about their performance today. You different.
I'm more than happy to surmise on your behalf as to what you might be thinking. I know, look, in fairness, again, there's plenty of green shoots for Tipperary from this league. Like, a bad semi-final performance isn't going to change what they've seen so far. So, like, Jake Morris has scored in 5 games. He scored a goal. So, he has got that kind of lethal touch in front of goal. We talk about what Connolly's been doing for Cork, where he scores back-to-back hat-tricks. Morris is the type of guy who's been buzzing around and looks like he's going for goal all the time. I've no doubt that Ford will get the free take and turn around. Like, Ford is a good free taker. This isn't as if we saw about Wexford, where they don't have maybe the most comfortable free takers and they still have to identify one. I would be fine if I was a Tipperary supporter if Ford is standing over a free when they go into championship in a few weeks' time. I think people have off days when it comes to the frees. Gerard O'Connor didn't hit them well today either. The pitch in O'More Park is a bit of a concern. I tweeted about this yesterday. I really hope that it gets a break now. They've got a few games coming up. Yeah. The sand was heavy, and the sand was heavy yesterday for the Down against Laois game too. I was a little bit shocked. I think it was after we recorded last week when I saw that Port Laois was going to be the venue for both the Division 1B playoff, or what you call promotion playoff, effectively, with Down and Laois, the 2A semi-final, and then to the Division 1 semi-final the next day. I was shocked when I saw how the pitch had been the last couple of weeks that they were going to do that. There's been heavy traffic through there in the last few months, and
Covered in vomit too now.
Well, yeah, and it's covered in sand, which is the best thing to maybe soak up the vomit. So
Do you see that?
Yeah.
Saw it, yeah.
What was that from?
I don't know.
Did he get bent the testicles or was it stomach?
No, I was more inclined to say we had a player a few years ago who he just had this kind of a reflex thing that, you know, after 20 minutes of hard running, sometimes he would say, right, I need to just go down here and just, that's what I thought it was. That's what it looked like, because it looked like it was kind of a case where the physios were going in going, yeah, he's just getting sick here now. He's after, you know, going for it.
Murph.
I did, yeah.
You know, I saw it. And then got up and played on. What's going on here?
But he got up and he that was part of why I thought that I associated with that player I played with, where it was like he just got up and it was like, yeah, that happens to me every so often, and he just ran it on because he didn't get up holding himself. He didn't get up, you know, he didn't take a knock before it or anything. So I think it was just like, I remember actually playing a match years ago where I had too much before the game and I was there going, oh, Jesus Christ, how am I was actually against Ian Tullamore, funny enough, but the nutritionist was always on to us, eat more, get as much into you. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go balls out in this one and just actually, and I swear to God, how I didn't get sick that day, I don't know. So I was more inclined to say that he may have overshot the runway with the Jaffa cakes.
You were farting and burping all through the game.
No, I felt
what did you eat, or how much did you eat here?
So
because this is a challenge accepted moment, it sounds like.
I had past the point of being comfortable. So like on a game day, I don't know about anyone else, but like you eat less on a game day because a little bit of nerves involved. So you get to the hotel and you're having your soup, your sandwich or whatever. There's a little bit of nerves. When you're nervous, you generally eat a little bit less. So I was like, okay, well, you know, just keep tipping away. Just have a little bit more if you can there. So like I had an extra few spoons of soup there. I had an extra few sandwiches and then maybe Jaffa cakes or whatever. And it was a baking hot day. And I went out and went, no, I should have stayed to where I was comfortable. Now, I didn't get sick or anything, but it was on the times. I think I followed the nutritionist's advice too much to the letter of the law. I was like, I'm going to get destroyed here. I can barely move. But anyway, I was all right.
Fair enough. The Division 2 semi-final on Saturday, by the way, was a very comprehensive win for Laois in the end, 124 to 13 points against Down. Paddy Purcell getting the Laois goal early in the second half. Their captain, Aaron Dunphy, struck over 7 points during the game. They're going to have Picky Maher, their chief scorer, back for the Carlow game this Sunday, so that's been fixed. For 3 o'clock at Netwatch Cullen Park, it's the benefit to Carlow this year for finishing top of the league is you have home advantage, so that's one to look forward to this coming weekend. Of course, we're getting ready for the league final with the Cats and Clare in a couple of weeks' time, so that's going to be great. We've got the members pod still to come. We will get through some more of the questions, some more stuff that the guys wanted to cover as well as part of that. So that will be available on Monday morning time. I'm hoping to get this pod out for Sunday night because we are recording a little bit earlier than normal after we watch the 2 games this weekend. So that's to look forward to. Lads, it's been a pleasure. Thanks a million.
Sound, lads.
Yeah, okay.
This has been your gratis hurling pod for this week, brought to you by Bord Gáis Energy. They're the proud sponsors of the All-Ireland Senior Championship. If you're an OTB member, you'll have that members pod tomorrow where we kind of delve into things a bit more detail, go off into all sorts of different tangents about different ideas as well. So that's available if you're a sub, and that'll be available from tomorrow. Lads, for now, thanks again.
Good luck.
Cheers. See you, mate.
OTB's The Hurling Pod.
With Bord Gáis Energy, proud sponsors of the Senior Hurling